So I'm sharing different AI tools that I use and kind of the non-obvious ways that I'm using them. And I guess they're tools that are relatively new, so you may or may not have heard of them. But one of my favorites that I use on a daily basis is Granola. I was first introduced to this through Lenny's newsletter and podcast. For paid subscribers, they get free access for a year to this tool, so I've just been kind of demoing it. And it's like a meeting note taker tool of sorts, with some major differences in terms of the current options on the market. Like I use Fireflies. I'm also a paid subscriber of that tool, but it does some things that are a little different. I would say most notably it adds this like notepad feature, and something that's really interesting about it, for better or for worse, is that you don't need to have it join a meeting. What it does is it just runs kind of in the background, and it uses your computer audio, and it generates a transcript. And so, it can create maybe some sort of an ethical gray area, because with a meeting note taker, you're asking for permission. People are aware that it's there, they can see it. But with Granola, you don't necessarily have to do that, but you should. And the way that it maybe skirts like ethical boundaries of sorts and is, still able to operate in terms of like, laws in different states about recording people without their consent or whatever, is that it doesn't actually record audio. It creates a live transcript based on the audio that it hears. So there's no audio recordings, it's just a transcript. But I wanted to talk about kind of like the non-traditional way. I mean, traditional in heavy quotes because it's a new tool that I'm using it. And that is like whenever I watch a YouTube video or a course or a podcast, I start the note taker and I create a new note. So for example, I finally took Ryan Law's thought leadership course. It's just been like sitting, for a couple of years after I bought it. And I've just been kind of like getting back into learning and, trying to expand my worldview and approach to content creation. And so it was perfect time. And, this just is a great example, I think, of how to use the tool. And so what's great is you can record the transcript. This is kind of like that running transcript. And it's showing two speakers, but it was really just one. And so you can record it, you can stop it, you can resume it. So if, for example, if you're learning something in multiple sessions, you can just go back to that same note. So I think that's kind of cool. You can copy the transcript, and then you can generate these notes from the transcript. And what's cool is you can add your own text. Like I did, I think at the bottom here, I just added some notes from the course that I wanted to be able to access later. And so anything that's like a slightly lighter color are my own notes, and anything that's darker, I believe, are the notes that are from the transcript that it's generating with AI. And I could have switched those, but I'm not sure. But that's the general idea. What's kind of cool is that you can use different templates for your notes. So let's say, I use Granola maybe for client calls. Maybe I use it for talking to myself and coming up with ideas that I'll then turn into like a blog outline. And then I have, my learning purposes, right? And so each of these could use a different note template. You can also take the content that you've created and repurpose that. And what's really cool is you could chat with your notes, and including the transcript, even like the things that aren't necessarily in the explicit notes. So like I remember one thing in the course is like talking about weasel words. I thought that was a cool concept. So we could say, what does Ryan Law say about weasel words and how to use them? And this I actually broke into two different Granola notes, so hopefully I'm getting the right one, and apparently I'm not, so maybe we'll find another one. Like for here, it's talking about jargon. What does Ryan Law say about using jargon? And we'll see how it expands, past what we can see like easily summarized here. So here's just a couple things you could dig in. I think it also gives you like a citation, or at least it used to. And you could certainly go in and say like what part of the transcript was this, and it should be able to tell you. But I think if we go to all recipes. That's like some of the different note templates. You could create your own templates. I think it used to be called templates and now it's recipes. What's kind of cool too for this purpose, for any note-taking purpose, because that is fundamentally what makes it different than an AI note taker, is you can also add like screenshots. You can attach different things to this notebook. So, certain concepts, that are illustrated visually, right, that may not communicate as well audibly, or maybe, aren't touched on in the audio, but you want to have that visual, you can add, and that's a good, useful addition. And then something that I've done in particular, here's the templates, so you can get kind of an idea there. So I haven't played around with recipes. I'm not 100% sure what makes that different. I think they're more like shortcuts. So the other thing that I was going to tell you is it has a Zapier extension. And so what I've done is, because I use it for this note-taking purpose and this transcript generation purpose, but I already kind of like live and breathe in Evernote. And so what's kind of cool, I mean, first of all, you could send it to Slack, right, if you wanted to share knowledge with your teammates. And you can, copy anything, the transcript, the notes that you generate, for example. But I created this Zapier workflow, I guess you call it, automation, where whenever there is something in Granola and I click this button, it transfers it to Evernote, and it includes all my notes. It includes the whole transcript as well. So I have like a complete, like very searchable copy in Evernote, easy to access. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are using Granola for like as a meeting note taker, but I wanted to share it as kind of like an educational aid as well. And like, especially as a content creator, it's like, I consume a lot of content to be able to create good content. And there's always, these little gems, right? And it's like, sometimes I'll forget, like, where did I find that? And so if I have a place that I can search to figure that out, even like asking the chat, for example, then, that's a useful resource. So another thing that I would do if it was like a YouTube video or a podcast is I would throw the URL in here just for easy reference. What else? It works on mobile, which is great. What I would love to see from the Granola team in the future is to be able to hyperlink text. For example, actually, maybe it is already working. Maybe I lied about that. I think there was something where I was like trying to copy it and it lost that formatting, so it might have been, the difference in terms of what I was copying from or something like that. I know there was another thing that I was thinking would be great here, but I can't remember now. So anyway, just wanted to introduce that tool, say that I'm loving it. I have written an article for Zapier about it if you want to, dive into some of those maybe more typical features, so I'll link to that. And yeah, I'd love to hear, like, if you're a Granola user, how you're using it, how it's helping your workflows as well.